Okay, so I'm just feeding the starter. Now I'm making this video so that I can show you how to maintain your starter. So I'll just turn around one sec. Okay, these are two starters I have. This one has white and whole wheat, and this one has white, whole wheat and rye. So when you add non-white flour to a sourdough starter or bread, it'll make it more sour. So this one is a 25-year-old starter that was freeze-dried, and I purchased it freeze-dried and then I just fed it and added to it. And this is one that I made myself. So this one's a younger starter, which will generally produce milder bread, and this one is a more sour one, okay? Now what you have to keep in mind is there's a few different ways that you can manage a starter. You're supposed to feed it every day or twice a day. You can't really follow a rule book, like when it comes down to it. You just got to keep an eye out on it every day to see what it's going to do. So for example, these ones I didn't feed for about 3 days. I probably should have had them in the fridge. I didn't. They developed a tiny little bit of like a surface with a bit of a cross with a bit of mold growing. Just took it off and chucked it away. There's nothing wrong if that happens. So what you're supposed to do as a general rule of thumb is feed once per day at the same time every day. Now this is going to depend on, you know, what the current weather's like, how warm it is in your house, all that kind of stuff. If the starter is really active, what you'll see is lots of bubbles here. This, I'll show you later what the bubbles look like. I've mixed it now so the bubbles are gone. But the way that you know your starter is active after feeding is if there's lots of bubbles and it rises. Generally, if it's not active and you feed it, it'll take a little bit longer to rise. So what that means is if you wanted to make bread with it, you'd have to wait until it was at its bubbliest point before it would be useful in bread, because your bread is not going to rise as much if your starter is weaker. Okay, so this is a ratio of, both of them have 1 whole wheat, 1 white and water. So if you use a measure, I use this. This is a 1 tablespoon measure. Then you do 1, 1, 1. So you put 1 tablespoon of white flour, 1 tablespoon of whole wheat flour, 1 tablespoon of water, and you mix. I'll just quickly mix this and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is the texture after mixing. I'm actually going to put these in the fridge because I'm not going to bake sourdough until maybe the end of this week or early next week. So if I'm going to start the preparation for baking on, let's say, Monday, then I'll pull these out on Sunday and feed them and just get them active, or maybe even Saturday, but just, you know, put them in for the time being. You'll notice as well, see how it's got the little bits of whole wheat? So for now, that's enough whole wheat in this starter. From now on, I'll drop back and feed it 1 tablespoon of white flour, 1 tablespoon of water, because it's got enough whole wheat in there. Now the other thing you'll notice is this sourdough is only this high and this one is this high, and I'll explain why. In the sourdough maintenance world, the point of having a sourdough is to feed it, and when it's really active, you discard the majority of it. You discard like 80% of it, and then you're left with like less than this, right? That's called discard. Every day you feed your sourdough, you discard some, and that's why it's called discard, because you discard some, and then you keep feeding it. Now, some people back in the day were discarding it and chucking it in the rubbish. You don't have to chuck it in the rubbish. You can use the discard for lots of different recipes. Pizza dough, cinnamon rolls, flatbreads, regular rolls. You can use it in anything. If you were to use sourdough discard in a recipe, usually it's like for example, the pizza dough recipe that I have, I use 1 cup of unfed sourdough starter. So I would use, let's say, some of that if I was going to make pizza with sourdough right now, or with sourdough starter right now. But you don't, every day, I don't discard every day. So I feed every day and feed and make sure the whole starter gets nice and funky smelling and, you know, all that kind of thing. And then instead of discarding every day and just chucking it away, once a week I say, okay, we're going to have pizza today, and then I use a cup of starter in that, as opposed to chucking the discard. And hopefully, as I said, hopefully I'll be making a sourdough this week or next week, and I'll show you the rest of the process, like, you know, feeding it, getting it ready, you know, what you do next, that kind of